We'll be talking basketball now, and I've got a special guest in the house. We're talking about Aisha Shuaibu, the SWA Sports president. And for SWA, we hear it is actually called Superwoman. Aisha, good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, let's talk about that name, SWA. How did you come about it?
Well, I have a brand development agency, and that's called SWA Global. And at the time that we decided to start a sports agency, we didn't think too far ahead. We just thought, let's just extend it to sports as well.
Nice, nice. Talking about the SWA Sports, supporting women. And of course, it is a sports agency which actually helps to support all aspects. And we really believe that the brand is doing so well. Let's talk about Nigerian basketball, because a lot of people have been talking about it for over the years now. A lot of private investors want to improve on basketball in Nigeria, but it feels like the federation isn't doing enough for the country.
I think as a member of the private sector, something very important that we need to do is collaborate, right? We can't continue to rely on government whenever it comes to development, as well as trying to make any sort of impact in the entire industry of sports, not just in basketball. Also, the foundation level is where the development should be. So even before we begin to talk about what we can do for basketball, we need to start talking about the core of the issues: infrastructure, expertise, investment, all other kinds of support. So, this is one of the main agendas of our agency. These are some of the problems that we're trying to solve, and I think it's a good place to start.
True, and we keep talking about grassroots basketball, grassroots development for these young lads, but we see a lot of them in the streets and basketball courts spread across Lagos, to be precise now, and it feels like they do not have this future when it comes to basketball. Don't you think we need to, because a lot of them will actually seek greener pastures outside the shores of Nigeria to better their skills in basketball, and at the end of the day, they don't get to support or play for the country. How do we tie these talents down to the country?
Development. They need development. We need to create a culture of sports in those grassroots communities, even with the infrastructure that's being built. If you notice, most of them are outdoor. We don't factor in weather conditions and all of these things that we need to have in place in order for talented youth that are interested in basketball to have a place to even train in the first place. Even in terms of officials, shoes, merchandise, jerseys, all of these things come together to create a culture of sports to be able to get these kids off the street. And I mean, that sports is such a powerful tool in getting youth active, turning them away from toxic habits, getting them engaged, getting them inspired, and it's fantastic for discipline. So by working on the culture of sports in those grassroots communities, solving all of those problems, these are some of the amazing impact that we can make in the lives of Nigerian youth.
True, and when it comes to the NBA as well, it looks like they have a better organizational structure over there. But let's focus on women now. Some years ago, female athletes came out to talk about equal pay for both male and female sportsmen, female sports now. And some of the men came out to say, look, this is not supposed to happen for women. We spend more time on the tennis courts. You don't play as much games as we do. But are you of the opinion that we should have equal pay for both sexes?
I think it's all about, as opposed to equality, I think it should be more about equity. I mean, sports business is a business at the end of the day. You can't really expect to earn the same as your male counterparts if you don't have the same sort of structure. For broadcasting, you don't have the same kind of viewership. What we need to do is we need to join hands in promoting more women in sports, creating access for them. And that would create a ripple effect of more support for them to even for there to be more female teams, so that when they go out there to compete, there would be more support for them. So if there is no audience, how do you expect to really benefit off what those with large audiences get? It's just not possible.
For Nigeria, for example, now the Super Falcons of Nigeria have won more trophies than the Super Eagles of Nigeria, but they earn lesser than the Super Eagles, but they have lesser audience, talking about the female side now. And we keep wondering, when are we going to create a balance for these factions now, for the women and the men? But looking at the girl child now, some parents feel like sports should be focused more on the boys. they are the ones who really participate in sport. Because when it comes to women, body-wise, there's a whole lot of, I don't know how to explain that now, but we feel like the females are not strong enough to get into sports like cycling, playing basketball, wrestling, boxing, and all of that. What would be your advice to parents who would want their children, females, to get into sports, but they don't have that opportunity?
You know, as a northern Nigerian myself, coming from a conservative culture, women in sports is still very unfamiliar and still very alien to us, right? And it's understandably so. But I think if we focus on the benefits of sports in the lives of people, both boys and girls, what it does for development, for mental health, and then where we are as well in Nigeria, you know, with our youth, we're predominantly youth. 70% of our population is below the age of 30, right? So there's only good things that can happen from getting young people engaged in sports. And I think we've also reached a point in our lives now where, in the world really, where we're seeing more and more conservative cultures around the world, African cultures that are just as conservative as us, getting more active. Senegal, for example, they're also a very conservative culture. But I mean, look at them, they're at the top of the top in Africa. You know, we are the African giants as Nigerians.
In quotes.
So, in quotes, so, you know, so we must prioritize the well-being of our youth, and sports has the power to do that. So I think we just need to sensitize people more on the knowledge of, you know, the benefits of sports and how, listen, it doesn't only have to be considered as a professional career for these young people. It could also just be recreational for them to just pursue a healthier life, better mental health. Yeah.
And finally, there's a future for female child in sports.
Yeah, 100%, of course, of course. I mean, you know, empowering women in general, not just, there's a lot of things that can be done through sports, right? It could be education, it could be any sort of empowerment program. Sports has the power to carry that along, right? So should we introduce after-school programs for public schools, for example? I mean, this creates so many opportunities for the girl child to be empowered. And you already know what happens when the girl child is empowered. It's like empowering a nation. That is the power of women.
All right, that's the power of women empowering the girl child.